Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Oh, Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club. Elkent's Movie Club. It's Elkent's Movie Club.
This is our new Friday tradition, the L. Kent Wogamont Movie Club with Kent Wogamont of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Kent, I saw you preening for the cameras there a moment ago. Explain the T-shirt.
It's from Cream Magazine, which is no longer with us. It was America's only rock and roll magazine in the 70s through the 90s, and it is part of why I'm such a degenerate writer, I think.
Awesome. So wait a minute, it was labeled as the only rock magazine.
Rock and roll magazine.
It was between that and Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone thought it was a cultural magazine, that had movies and politics and all of that in it. This was a straight up music magazine, and it was also more a punk rock more and that kind of stuff, and more of the
kind of counterculture.
Yeah. And the important part was it was really, really, really funny, and it made fun of the rock stars more than it worshipped them. And their captions were, you'd read the captions first of the pictures because they were just insulting and hilarious. And it was like you came down on a Cream. It's sort of like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Who do you like better? It's the Cream and Rolling Stone. And Midwest lunkheads like me liked Cream.
Did it predate the band Cream?
No, it was the name was actually stolen from the band Cream, except they changed it.
They spelled it. Yeah,
they misspelled it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Mad Magazine or National Lampoon of music.
Yeah, not quite that far, but closer. The attitude, certainly.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
All right.
Did you ever see Almost Famous?
Oh, I love that movie.
Yes.
Lester Bangs, the critic that Philip Seymour Hoffman played, Lester worked at Cream.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, now it all comes back and it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This week, our movie, 8 years old, 2012 was when this came out. Romantic comedy, Safety Not Guaranteed. This was a Stibbs selection. So very, very not on brand for Stibbs. I mean, romantic comedy, though I will say this, and I almost like went and got the opening scene when basically the lead character introduces herself. The way she introduces herself, it's almost as if it was written by Stibbs for Stibbs. Just how miserable her life was. And so when this movie started, I'm not going to lie, I thought, oh, God, we're going down this road.
Here we go again.
But it actually turned out to be a rather enjoyable watch, Stibbs. So why don't you lead us off here and explain a little bit what it's about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kent, but I believe it's based off of that the ad was actually something that was I think that's probably the end of the truthfulness of this story.
I would think so as well.
The ad is real, and so that's what this story was kind of based on and written around that, which was
the ad is great.
It is great, and I think that's word for word. And that is what actually pulled. I saw a story about how there's a movie being made about this ad, and what pulled me towards the movie itself because I thought it sounded interesting. But yeah, I guess technically it's a romantic comedy. It definitely is. It's a lot different than it's not my best friend's wedding or anything like that. What I loved about it the most was the ending, because the whole time So spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, click off now, tune. We'll come
Don't do
back in
that.
5 minutes. But the whole time you're thinking, all right, this guy's wacko. Aubrey Plaza is one of the journalists, right? Yeah. And
she's the intern.
She's the intern. And so her and another writer are tasked to go check out who the hell put this ad in the paper that said.
We should probably read the ad real quick just to give it some context.
Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, it says,
it.
So it's a want ad that says, wanted somebody to go back in time with me. This is not a joke. Then it gives the address, a P.O. box. You'll get paid after we get back. Must bring your own weapons. Safety not guaranteed. I have only done this once before.
What an ad.
It's incredible.
And so at the very beginning, they're pitching this. We got to go find this guy.
The writer,
this is
weird as hell.
Yeah, and it's one of the characters from New Girl, if you ever watched
great.
that. And he's like, I want to write this story. So he brings 2 interns along with him, and they basically go in search of this guy.
Yeah, they find him. The whole time you think this dude's a wacko, obviously, because of the ad. He seems weird as hell. That's where the love interest comes in. Aubrey Plaza's character and him kind of start to get a little frisky. But what made me, like, I remember watching it the first time and thinking, like, all right, this is cool and cute and whatever. And then it was the ending when the whole time you're thinking, like, this guy's nuts. And then they do it. Like, he gets in this boat and they time travel and they disappear. And I remember thinking, like, that is awesome, because, like, that's what I wanted to happen. You're rooting for the guy to be right when the whole time in the back of your mind, you're like, no one can do that. Obviously he's not, but he's such kind of a sweet dude. You don't want him to be a joke. And then sure as crap, you get to the end and he was right the whole time. I liked it.
Oh yeah, it's a very entertaining little picture. The great thing is you call it a romantic comedy, but it really isn't. It doesn't follow the formula by any stretch of the imagination.
No. Yeah.
It's not really a sci-fi picture, but it kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually.
And it's not really a drama, right? Because it's too funny and, like, as these people are
out there and quirky. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all those things kind of rolled into one. And it's rare that you see a movie that's able to do that, combine those kind of things and not turn out to be one or the other of those. And what makes it even more impressive is this is a first feature for both the writer and the director. And it was obviously filmed on $7.50.
Well, technically, you're close. Just move the decimal point, but the budget was $750,000.
Oh, really? Okay.
Movie is cheap.
Yeah.
Well, for a movie,
it was that
big
close.
actors. Aubrey Plaza isn't a big star, but she got some cash.
Uh-huh.
And Duplass got some cash. And, those two primarily would have gotten paid. And once you start doing that, inside baseball here, the movie budgeting process is called above the line and below the line. Above the line is what you're paying in salary, what you're paying the actors. Below the line is production cost, which includes crew and location and and I would guess of that $750,000, probably less than half went to the production.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a low budget movie for the quality of the movie that it is.
And it looks good.
It looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, Kent, the thing that I kind of take away from it, I want to make a comparison, first of all, to a movie, and I don't know if anyone has seen this one. I assume you have, Ken, is Garden State. It's a Zach Braff movie. Very similar to that in terms of it. I thought it dealt with a character that, like mental health is obviously a discussion point in this movie. It was a discussion point in Garden State. And I thought it dealt with that very, very well. So that was one of the things that I thought of. But I also, I just, like, I'm a very close to the same age as Aubrey Plaza. And so, John just mentioned this is an 8-year-old movie. And just that, like, what am I doing with my life of it all with her character and then the guy intern? Meanwhile, the person that they're looking up to is, he's a pretty trashy human being.
Yes.
Like he wants to ultimately go to this small town. He doesn't really care about the article. He's trying to hook up with a high school fling, and he treats her terribly throughout the movie. So I thought I just thought it was a really interesting take on that, like post-college, but like pre-career, where you think you know what you want to do, but you don't exactly know what you want to do.
And that's what I was going to say. I actually, obviously the movie centers around Aubrey Plaza's character and Mark Duplass's character as the two who are, going to time travel. But I liked the sidebar stories with Jake Johnson, who's playing the actual writer who brings the interns with him, but he really has nothing to do with the story. As Josh said, he's just wanting to hook up with an old, high school fling from this town. And then the other intern was played by Karen Sony, and kind of their efforts to get him
laid.
To get him laid. But I kind of I liked how they kind of weaved in. It didn't overly take over the story, but just how they weaved in those sidebar stories to the main, thrust of this story, and that is, this guy who's trying to time travel, and Aubrey Plaza, who is doing all the legwork, trying to find out his story, and then eventually, she ends up falling for him.
And I think I think you have to note the performances because of that as well. This is the movie. Aubrey Plaza then 2 or 3, 4 years ago, 5 years, I don't know, whenever. She was in that Somebody and Somebody Need Wedding Dates with Adam Devine, the kid from Omaha. And I did a piece on that movie and talked to him, but I also talked to her briefly on the phone. And this was the movie that she says probably was the thing that made her career, sort of, and broke her out of the Parks and Rec character, for lack of a better way to put it. And so she was able to play something a little different. And I thought she was absolutely great in this.
Yeah, Kent, that's a great point, because her character in that, and one of the other things that I remember seeing her in first was Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And she's just like hates everything. And so I thought it's funny how John kind of introduced this movie of like, oh, here we go, typical Stibbs. But she leaves that type of character that it seemed like she got typecast into for a few years, surrounding Scott Pilgrim and surrounding Parks and Rec.
And then she showed she could do this, and she gave a performance. I think she couldn't have been more charming in that role. You couldn't have been. No, and Jay Duplass is he's like that in every movie, and in this one it really fit. And notable that he is sort of a indie film king. Not just acting, but writing and directing and all of that. And it just really worked. And it's one of those movies you wonder why it didn't get seen more when it was. Why didn't it catch on? Well, it's because I looked at coming out. It wasn't released even by a indie subsidiary of a major. It was released by a company, I think, that's no longer even with us. And so it didn't have any advertising and didn't have the big distribution. So it just played on 1 or 2 screens in a city or something. And that's unfortunate, because I think it's a really good little movie. And it's the exact perfect running time at 1 hour and 26 minutes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it doesn't drag. It moves along. And there are a couple of what I would call A-list cameos.
Yes.
Kristen Bell shows up, and Jeff Garlin from the Goldbergs and from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yep.
Both have a brief role. I assume that those probably come about because they're friendly with either one of the producers.
Exactly. Or the casting director, or the writer, or Jay Duplass, or whoever. Yeah. And they probably got paid next to nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Was Kristen Bell in it for
a minute,
5 seconds?
Yeah. It was cool when they opened the door and it's like, oh, Kristen Bell. I didn't realize she was getting. And then when Jeff Garland showed up too, it was like, oh, this is cool.
So she probably did it for scale, whatever 1 day union scale is, which isn't that much. So the other thing that I think is that I remembered watching this in the theater, and watching it here, and it really doesn't lose anything, right? Going from the big screen down. Okay.
Sure.
No, I would agree.
And that's why I think in part you're going to see a lot of these kind of movies just go directly to streaming from now on, right? Or play places like the Ross here and Film Streams in Omaha, and then go to streaming relatively quickly. Because yeah, it's nice to see. I like to see movies on the big screen, but this is one that didn't lose anything going down, so to speak.
For sure.
Is that good for the industry for these types of films, or could that be a detriment that it doesn't get its day in the sun on a big screen?
That's a really good question. That's the great unanswered question. You know, it's clear that's the direction that movies were already starting to go before our friend COVID. And now that's just accelerated that process, you know. And I think about, for example, Roma, the movie that was one of the considered probably critically the best movie of 2018 was a Netflix movie. It played in about 10 theaters. I think it did play Film Streams at one time, but it never played here. And it went directly to streaming. And so I think that's going to happen more and more. The issue with streaming is how many people are going to pay for every streaming service, right? I mean, I've got Netflix, Apple, Amazon Prime, but I don't have Disney Plus. So if something goes on there, out of luck, you know, and that reduces your audience.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where would the other major distributors be? Who are we missing?
Hulu had a new movie that came out this year that they ended up buying. It played at one of the festivals like right before COVID happened. Called Palm Springs. They decided to buy the rights, and that was another movie I've watched it like 9 or 10 times. And that's one that I don't think it lost a whole lot by not being on the big screen. But you wonder, and I assume you saw the news, Kent, about like Apple's trying to go after the James Bond movie that was in some of the trades, and it's like, are they actually going to be able to pull that off? Because you know that it's so far away still theoretically before they'd be able to recoup the money of a traditional release. But that's a movie that you need to see on the big screen.
Right. But remember, this is Apple. Money isn't exactly an issue with Apple.
Yeah, all you members. Just
settle
handing
down.
over your money.
Settle down.
I am a full-fledged member of the cult of Apple. I am.
We just like good products.
This is on a MacBook.
I do too, and that's why I don't have one.
And there's an iPad here, you know, and there are 2 more iPads upstairs and another. Yeah. This is Apple cult right here. Give Steve. I was going to say give Steve Jobs your money, but he's a little dead.
R.I.P. I thought about picking that movie before because I know how much John would hate watching it, but maybe down the road.
I would hate watch it. All right, I would definitely hate watch it. The whole
maybe
thing.
down the road.
Hey, real quick, Kent. I know Kevin Costner's got a brand new film that's out, and it is in theaters with Diane Lane. Called Let Him Go, and I believe you had a chance to see that this week, right?
I did indeed, and I thought it was really quite good. It is a thriller of a sort, and a very slow burn on it, and it's set in the early 1960s in Montana. They are married. He's a retired sheriff. They live on a ranch. Costner is, and she's the stay-at-home mom, ranch wife, great horseback rider, yada yada yada. Their son is married, and they just have a little baby, and he gets killed. He gets bucked off a horse and killed. Fast forward 3 years, she remarries. The wife remarries to this guy who's a bad guy, you find out, and they up and move to North Dakota and don't tell grandma and grandpa where they're going. They're afraid of what's going to happen for this kid, and they head off to North Dakota to try to get the kid back. That's the gist of the story. It's based on a novel, and it's very character driven, up until about the last 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And then it goes full blast thriller. Kevin Costner is the contemporary Western hero, right? He's the American cowboy now. And he really inhabits that. Diane Lane, I think, is one of the most underrated actresses there is. She's almost always good. And the two of them really work well together. The family that where the little boy ends up is. Have you seen Animal Kingdom? The Australian movie and series about it's a crime family run by a mother. This family reminded me of that. And the actress that plays her, Leslie Laswell, is actually English, but she comes off as your hard-bitten Montana ranch woman perfectly. And it gets kind of violent by the end, but it's really well done. And it felt to me like, people are calling it a thriller is the easy way to describe it, but it's really a contemporary Western. You could take this exact story and set it in the 1860 instead of 1960. And the only difference is the chases will all be on horseback.
I was going to ask, have you seen Yellowstone, Costner's series on Paramount?
Absolutely.
I'm guessing that if you like Yellowstone, you'd probably like this too.
Absolutely, you would. Although Yellowstone,
I'm a big fan of Yellowstone. It's a great show.
Yellowstone's kind of the Godfather / the Sopranos on the ranch is what it really is.
Yes.
Is this movie streaming, Ken, or is this one in theater?
This is in the theaters.
Okay.
This is, I will. I'll tell you the difference between your major studio releases that we're now watching on the web and they'll send a link, and your indie studios send you a link and they give you like 3 weeks to watch it, right? Your major studios send you a link and you have 72 hours from the date, from the timestamp on the email.
So you better get to watching.
Man.
So you watch it now or you don't watch it at all.
All right, so that is now out in theaters, and I'm sure at some point, Nick, because these things turn around pretty quickly, it'll probably be streaming somewhere at some point in the next 5 to 6 months. But Let Him Go with Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. Ken, do we have a prediction?
Well, we got to. What about my movie? What about my movie,
hell?
John? John really doesn't want me to pick my movie.
No. We can do that. I just wanted to get his prediction
all
first.
right.
For no good reason, like I know nothing, I'm going to say Nebraska 28, Northwestern 24.
Evil Kent?
Yes.
I could see 52-38 or something like that. Probably Nebraska.
The over would hit in that scenario.
Whoa.
Big over.
If Nebraska scores 52, everybody will have a heart attack.
It'll be a good weekend.
Yeah, you might be right. All right, Josh. So spring this on us. You said we're going to go back to the 1800s.
Oh my goodness!
Something that Edison probably did while he was experimenting in his lab.
Ken. You never do this because you're like a very hip person. But
I think I know what you're going to pick.
You think so?
I kind of do.
All of the olds in my life are always like, "Hey, you need to respect your elders more." And so I'm going to pick a movie that my elders watched in the theater because, and you just mentioned Netflix movies. There's a new movie coming out in like a month from David Fincher called Mank. It is about the creation of Citizen Kane. I've never watched Citizen Kane. It is available on HBO Max. That is my choice.
What?
I nailed it.
I've
never seen it either. I'm excited.
I have. I saw it in a high school class.
I saw it in a talkie.
I saw a tweet about it or something the other day and was like, I kind of want to watch that. So good pick. I'm excited.
This will be really interesting. This will be really interesting.
I bet.
Because this movie, when they do the polls of the greatest movies ever, always ends up in the top 5, right? It used to end up number 1 all the time, but it's kind of been, moves up and down more a little now, and because you have like Godfather and
Shawshank.
What I'm trying to think, what else is another one that's all Casablanca is always up there. You know, there's certain 3 or 4 that kind of switch around now, but yeah, this will be real. So neat. 2 of you haven't seen it.
Never seen it. Yeah, and
I have seen it,
and I'm a huge Fincher fan, so I'm obviously going to watch that. And it's like, you know what, I probably should watch Citizen Kane before I watch Mank.
And Kent, I think you will agree with me. This will definitely have some contemporary ties because
the
term fake news. It wasn't invented here, but you'll recognize some things about Mr. Kane and what he does.
Yes.
That was what I thought you were going to guess, so I looked it up real quick, and I was going to make some guesses before you said it. But when I brought it up, the little short Wikipedia thing came up. This had a bigger budget in 1941 than Safety Not Guaranteed did.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
$839,000.
Wow,
that's crazy.
What would that be in today's dollars?
How much?
$839,727.
In 1941, that would be.
It grossed 1.5 million, almost 1.6.
That would be $1.8 million today.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Well, but remember things
back then.
Yeah.
You know, back then you weren't paying the exorbitant salaries either. The star of the movie happened to be the director.
Yeah, exactly. So Wells wasn't paying himself. He was hoping that the movie would make money at the box office.
Also, on the poster for this, he looks like Leonardo DiCaprio.
In some ways, yeah.
I can see it.
You guys aren't old enough to remember him when he was fat old Orson Welles.
I greatly do.
I remember.
Selling the wine, I will sell no wine before it's time. You know.
Yeah, see, that's the thing because it's funny you mentioned that because I had the same perception of Joe DiMaggio. When I was growing up, Joe DiMaggio was Mr. Coffee. I had no idea Joe DiMaggio was the greatest baseball player of his time.
Amazing.
And the same thing with Orson Welles, because Orson Welles, what was the name of the vineyard?
Wasn't Mogan David, it was Martini and Rossi or one of those. It was a something.
Paul Mason.
Paul Masson.
Paul Masson.
We will sell no wine before it's time. And he just had this beautifully deep voice, and he just looked so, elegant, like you'd believe him. And so when I saw this movie back in high school, I'm like, wait a minute, that's the wine dude. So I had the same impression of Orson Welles as I did of Joe DiMaggio. I had them linked in totally different ways because of commercials, not because of what made them famous.
Well, this will be fun. Let me prime the pump a little bit. Pay attention, in addition to the story and all of that, to the technical aspects of this picture, how it was shot and all of that kind of stuff, and then place it in its historical context.
Yeah. I've seen screen caps and screenshots of shots of this movie, and it looks incredible. Like, terrifying at times. The angles that they use, the wide angles from above and below, it looks cool. Yeah,
I'm pumped.
Yeah, and
all right, Josh, I cut you a break.
And it becomes even more sort of mind-boggling that he was able to do that.
Awesome.
All right, so this is kind of like recommending War and Peace in book club. I mean,
this is welcome to film school, boys.
Exactly.
Let's go.
All right, we may have to reserve 2 segments for next week's movie club. Kent, have a great weekend. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
See you next week.
Later, Kent.
Citizen Kane on HBO Max. The only thing that makes me mad about this is
HBO Max.
My difficulty of getting HBO Max.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Adam says, I had to watch Citizen Kane in college, one of the most overrated and boring movies I've ever seen, just my opinion.
Ooh.
Harsh.
I'm sure there's a generational gap.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Oh, there is, but if you're a film nerd, you'll love it. And like I said, they're
very prescient, it seems.
Think of the term fake news. And there's a little bit of truth to that.
I think this will be like my second big like Orson Welles piece of culture. The only other thing that I can think that I've heard, or because I haven't seen it, was the War of the Worlds. We listened to that in college in one of my broadcasting classes, but I don't know if I've really taken in a whole lot of Orson Welles.
He
otherwise,
didn't do much, right? He kind of did a few things and then disappeared.
Yeah,
those Wikipedia pages.
He really, I mean, in a weird way, the Citizen Kane, the character kind of fits his life story of what eventually became to him.
Oh, no, he did a lot. He did. I'm looking at his discography, or not discography, his movies that he did.
Well,
he directed,
if he did, then none of them were good. Because
he directed like 20 movies.
There's the joke of like he was kind of really good early in his career.
Yeah, he peaked and then
right up. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Past time for a break. Don't forget One Beer Friday, brought to you by the Doghouse Saloon in Waterloo. Keep sending us pics of what you're enjoying. # One Beer Friday, and you might win $25 from the Doghouse Saloon in Waterloo and 1620 The Zone.